Hello, traveler, and welcome to the CopperSpoon. Hello, traveler, and welcome back to the series where I fully recreate my cookbook, The CopperSpoon Chronicles, by hand to get back in touch with my artistic and creative side today. We are moving on to Chapter 2 of the CopperSpoon Chronicles, Family Traditions. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this project, the CopperSpoon Chronicles isn't just a cookbook. It's actually a full fantasy adventure story told through the journal entries of our main character, Cobb Copperspoon. And I picture Cobb Copperspoon walking through this world, going on her adventures with a big old leather-bound tome at her side that she's filling in with stories and recipes. And that is what I'm setting out to create today. So, like I said before, today we are moving on to Chapter 2, Family Traditions. Now, the Family Traditions section of the cookbook is still in the preparation phase. Last week we fully covered Chapter 1, which was preparing for the journey, where Cobb Copperspoon wrote down all the tips, tricks, and techniques that she would need to remember on her journeys. But this section is a little bit different in the way that she's still preparing for her journey, but instead, now she's writing down her actual family recipes that she wants to take along with her. So if she ever gets homesick or meets some new friends that she wants to share some of her recipes with, she has them all ready to go at her fingertips. So, with all that being said, there's lots of work to be done. So let's hop into Chapter 2 of the CopperSpoon Chronicles cookbook, Family Traditions. So, like I mentioned previously, this entire section is all about family traditions. What family traditions in particular, you might be asking? The first one, of course, is the actual adventure itself. It is a tradition for the Copperspoon family to leave their home and go on an adventure to fill up their cookbook. But there are traditions within traditions. So one of the traditions is to bring the big Copperspoon family tome, but another tradition is to bring something called the pantry pouch. Now the pantry pouch is essentially a magical pouch that you reach into and you can grab any spices from the collection of spices the Copperspoon family has back at home. And it's tradition for the rest of the family to look and see what the current adventuring family member is using on their journey. They are also given an heirloom family copper spoon. Now, this is a magical copper spoon that can turn into any utensil you could possibly want, and it also automatically cleans itself. And let's be honest, this is just a magical item that I want in real life. Okay, so I just got done with the full writing portion of this section of the cookbook, but I've gotten to the art point now, and I'm just not super duper impressed with the art that's in here. This is one of the filler images that I took as a process of a different recipe later on in the book, and it's really cute, and it has like some really nice looking ingredients, but I'm just not sure if it really like fits on this specific page. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hop over to my Patreon. I'm going to post a question, should we just like redo this drawing, or is there another idea that one of you guys have that you think would work better here? Because if I'm being honest, I think that there's something that could fit here more. I'm just not sure what it is. Okay, so I have these first couple pages done aside from the little doodle that I still needs to go in this section here. So as soon as I get replies on kind of like for ideas of what should go here, I will do that doodle probably tonight, but I'm going to hold off on moving on to any of the recipes because I actually have something very fun that I'm going to try and attempt to do tomorrow with a couple of these recipes. What I want to do is I want to try and cook a meal at the same time as I'm writing down the recipe. I've mentioned this in other videos before, but essentially, I really want this cookbook to look used. I don't want it to look cookie cutter and clean and perfectly polished. I want it to look like CopperSpoon is cooking a meal over a campfire, and then afterwards or during, she's writing down the recipe as she goes. And the only way I'm going to get that look on these pages is if I actually cook while I'm writing, if I actually have a mess while I'm writing down these recipes. So I'm going to attempt to record myself both making a meal as well as writing it down at the same time. I am going to be fully honest. I don't know how this is going to work out because I have a very small space to kind of record in and see how it goes. Maybe it's not going to work at all, but if all goes right, I think it'll be really cool and it will add even more integrity and even more character to this project. So, wish me luck with that and let's see how it goes. So, this day went really well, kind of. I woke up and my ring light wasn't working, which always unfortunate, and I lost some of the footage from this specific filming session. But actually making the recipe while writing down the recipe in the book was such a fun experience. I was really able to slow down, just kind of like zone out on making some bread, writing down some story, writing down some recipe. It was really fun, and it was definitely infuriating at the end of the night when I found out a bunch of my footage went missing. But, we take it in stride. So this recipe here is Not Your Papa's Bread Rolls. Now, all of the family traditions recipes, aside from a couple, are all recipes from my childhood. This specific recipe is a recipe that's not from my childhood, because the whole point of this recipe is that my dad's not a baker. He made box cake mix occasionally, and like cupcake mix when he had a sweet tooth, and would make a lot of like candy during Christmas, but he wasn't a huge baker necessarily, and he definitely wasn't making like homemade breads. So the reason that this is called Not Your Papa's Bread Rolls is because this is a recipe that Cobb made because her dad didn't have any bread recipes except one of the big recipes of this section. The other recipe that I'm going to be making along with this is a sandwich recipe that her dad came up with. So that's kind of why this recipe is in here. In the original cookbook, this recipe actually comes after the chicken sandwich recipe, but in chronological order of me needing to make the recipes, I needed the bread to be done before I could finish the sandwich, so I actually ended up writing this out first, and honestly, it just makes a lot more sense structurally wise in the cookbook this way anyways. So I really, really, really enjoy how this recipe page came out. I think that the watercolor artwork is chef's kiss. It came out exactly how I wanted it to. Even it got a little ink splotch on it, but it doesn't even matter. I really enjoy kind of like the rustic look of these pages, the simple looks, the flower that's forever ingrained inside of this homemade paper. I love how this page came out, and I hope you enjoy it too. Now that I really sit here and like think about it and listen to my voiceover, my dad definitely like baked a bunch when we were kids, but it was like coffee cake and cinnamon rolls and that sort of thing. and he never really made a bunch of bread unless it was like homemade dinner rolls or that sort of thing for like Thanksgiving. I think he might have tried to bake bread once or twice. But either way, in the fantasy version of this story, Copperspoon's dad definitely does not bake bread. And so she made a recipe for him. Jeez, why am I slamming the bowl so hard? Why am I so angry? Somebody needs to stop me. I don't know why I slammed the bowl so hard on the counter.
Yeah.
So the bread that this specific recipe is based off of is ciabatta. Do I think that this is the perfect ciabatta recipe? Absolutely not. But this is probably one of my better sandwich bread recipes. It holds up really well to all of the ingredients. It has the like loose vibes of a ciabatta bread. I used to work at a bakery where I did help make bread like foods. That's where I really learned how to make like bagels and focaccia. I did a lot of cake decorating and stuff there, but that's kind of where I got the ability to be able to like actually shape breads. It's a lot of just folding the bread in on itself, creating circles, and then rolling those circles out into whatever shapes you want. So for this one, I just kind of like rolled the dough balls in on themselves because it's a pretty sticky dough. So I just kind of stuck it together, pinched it together with itself, rolled it around, and then flattened it out into a little disc shape, which was perfect for our bread rolls or the sandwiches. now that we have all of our ingredients gathered and our bread made, it is finally time to start actually cooking our chicken caprese sandwich. This is called the cockatrice caprese. The story behind this is that when Papa Copper was on his CopperSpoon family adventure, he was out at a fishing hole, and little did he know that there was a cockatrice nearby. A cockatrice is a beast with the body of a giant rooster and the tail of a serpent. And so after Papa Copper slayed this beast, had an epic fight with it, had an epic battle, he decided to butcher what was still usable and make a meal out of it. And that's how this recipe was born for the CopperSpoons. This is a recipe that I used to always make. This was a weekly rotation in our household for a little while. It's just cooked chicken with melted mozzarella on top. It's got tomatoes and basil, and it's got a balsamic mayo that you put on it, and it's absolutely delicious. I remember I would bring leftovers of this to French class, and me and my best friend would split the sandwich in French class when we should have been practicing our lessons. I have excellent memories associated with this sandwich, so it was super special to me to be able to put this in the cookbook to be published. And it was also super special to actually hand write this recipe down and make it with my own two hands. Unfortunately, this is where I did lose a bunch of my footage, so it was a little upsetting getting done with this process because I lost a bunch of footage that I was very eager to share with you guys. But that's okay. You live, you learn, you move on, and we'll get it next time. Hello, traveler. So, I'm not gonna lie, yesterday was a rough one. Yesterday was when I filmed the cockatrice caprese sandwich recipe, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong. To start out the day, my last working ring light crapped out on me. So if you're wondering why this video looks so weird, it's probably because I don't have my normal light set up. Then the actual filming went fine. Everything was actually looking really, really good, and I was so excited about it. And then I got all the way to the end of the process, and I found out a huge chunk of my video didn't save. Luckily, as you saw in the video before this probably, uh, it was still salvageable, but it's definitely super disappointing because a bunch of work that went into this page is missing now. So I decided to call it quits early. At the end of the day, if my biggest problem in life is that one of my videos didn't record and save properly on my phone, then I live a pretty privileged life. So if there seems like there's a missing chunk of this last recipe page, it's because there is. It's so sad because I think it came out really pretty and I think it would have been really cool. But since it did not record and we can't go back and erase the ink that's already in here, we are just going to move forward. In lieu of everything that happened, though, I have decided to kind of take it easy on myself. Originally, I was planning to get all of the rest of this recipe section done by tonight, and I might still, depending on how I'm feeling as I go, but I'm not going to push myself too hard. I'm just going to get done what I can get done, take my time, and make sure I'm enjoying myself while I do it because I don't want to burn myself out on this project this soon into it. So, with all that being said, there's only one thing left to do, and that's getting started. As always, it is very important to prepare for work with snackies. So be sure to work responsibly and always have snacks. So Nana's no wheat bread is not actually a recipe from my childhood, but my Nana went gluten-free later on in life, and I knew when making the cookbook that I wanted to be inclusive as possible with all of the recipes. So I asked her to come up with all of the gluten-free recipes for the cookbook. This was one of them, and I thought that this would be the perfect place to put it because it was very early on in the book. It went along with a sandwich recipe, so it was kind of the perfect place for it here. These last 3 recipes, the lemony toadstools with salty cheese, Nana T's copper pop, and Grammy Linda's spoon tacos, are all also recipes from my childhood. The lemony toadstools with salty cheese was a recipe we would always take with us to these Christmas dinner parties that my dad's work would throw. He worked at a fly shop, and so it was mostly just like a group of friends hanging out and having like a dinner party because there was only like 7 employees, maybe at most. There might have even been less than that, but this was something that we'd always make and take to the dinner parties with us. Nana T's Copper Pop is peanut butter honey popcorn that we have been making every year for Christmas since I was a child, and it's so delicious. The kernels will break your teeth off, though, if you do not remove them before you add the peanut butter and popcorn. And then, of course, there is Grammy Linda spoon tacos. Whenever I went to my grandma's house, we would always make spoon tacos every single time we went over, and me and my sisters would always sit at the counter and watch my Grammy cook the spoon tacos, and we would fight over who got to make the guacamole, but we were old enough to help. So these are all recipes from my childhood, and it was very special being able to share them with you guys in the form of the cookbook. With all the artwork done and all of the recipes written down, we are ready to get into the final reveal. So, final thoughts on this section of the cookbook. I'm not gonna lie, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this section of the cookbook. I love how some of these pages came out, and I hate how some of the other ones came out. But if we're being honest, that's just kind of life. Sometimes it's gonna be a hit, sometimes it's gonna be a miss. This first page, I'm not the biggest fan of how the artwork came out on it. I should have just mimicked the picture that was already in the cookbook, but I didn't, and so this is what it looks like now, and it's not bad. It's just not my favorite. I really love how the copper caprese recipe came out, and I also love how the bread recipe came out. I think that the flour being stuck to the page is super aesthetic and cute. I really enjoy how it came out. I also love Nana T's Copper Pop as well as Grammy Linda's Spoon Tacos. I think those pages came out great. The only one I'm not super pleased with is the lemony toadstools with the salty cheese. The only reason I'm not as huge of a fan of that one is because I didn't have enough room on the page to draw out a picture for it, but I didn't want to like dedicate the whole back of the page just for that picture. I thought it would look weird. So I didn't end up adding a picture for it, and It's fine, but I think it would have looked better with one. As far as like neatness goes, I do think I'm getting a lot cleaner with everything. There's definitely still some ink splotches and that sort of thing, but that's kind of what I want for this project. So overall, I'm very pleased with how it's looking so far. I can't wait to get started on some of the next sections and get into some of the actual storytelling of CopperSpoon's adventure. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the page to stay up to date on this project. Leave a comment down below on how you think it's coming so far. And if you want to further support the page, be sure to check out our Patreon, where you will get full access to a bunch of early access content, as well as bonus content and extra features like our podcast, as well as a bunch of behind the scenes content. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the page. And I will see you next time, travelers. Bye bye.